Today, we're going to continue our discussion on preventive medicine. Last time, we were talking about epidemiology. We talked about the definition of epidemiology, the aims of epidemiology, the uses of epidemiology, as well as the strategies or approaches in epidemiology. Then we're going now to discuss also the differences between outbreaks, epidemics, and pandemics, how to interpret epidemic curve, the public health surveillance, as well as outbreak investigation. We answered the following questions before we started talking about the definition of epidemiology. And we said that epidemiology is not only applicable to communicable diseases, but it can also be applied in non-communicable diseases. So there is such a thing as epidemiology of cardiovascular diseases, epidemiology of cancer, epidemiology of nutritional deficiencies, etc. And then we said that agents of diseases are not only referring to biological agents such as viruses, bacteria, parasites, protozoan infections, but they can also be brought about by agents of diseases like physical agents. So heat, noise, cold, vibration, atmospheric pressure, radiation can also cause diseases. Chemical agents such as mists, fumes, vapors, okay, um, dust particles are also agents of diseases that can give rise to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, bronchial asthma, contact dermatitis, and other types of diseases. And then there is also what's termed as ergonomic agents. Ergonomic agents of diseases would include poor relationship between the anthropometric measurements of man as well as the instruments that he or she is using, giving rise to carpal tunnel syndrome, giving rise to low back pain, and giving rise to different musculoskeletal disorders. Okay, the social environment where man is actually working may also give rise to stress and give rise to diseases which we term as ergonomically related diseases. We did ask the question, is prevention only applicable when the patient is not ill? And we said that prevention can be applied in the whole spectrum, whether the patient is not sick, and even when the time that the patient is already sick. So prevention can be done at the pre-pathogenic phase of illness, where the patient is not sick, and it can also be done when the patient is already sick. Okay? So to prevent further progression of the disease and to prevent disability and death, one has to employ preventive measures even when the patient is already suffering from a disease. As to definition of epidemiology, we made mention that epidemiology is the study of, and these are the three components, distribution of disease in human population, as well as the factors affecting the distribution. So a particular disease is supposed to be characterized as to place, as to time, and as to the people affected. Knowing factors present in that particular place, present during that time, and the factors affecting present in that particular population, we may be able now to identify the determinants of the disease. And doing something about these factors now will bring about prevention of disease and even maintenance of people's health. In order for us now to have an understanding of the multifactorial causation of health and disease, epidemiologists came up with models, and one of these models is actually the epidemiologic lever. So an imbalance may happen and disease may happen because there are issues related to the agent factor. So the virulence, the characteristics of the agents now, okay, whether they are infective, whether they are invasive, whether they are toxigenic, whether they are immunogenic, okay, whether they are virulent agents, okay, whether they are pathogenic agents, okay, are characteristics that may bring about disease, okay. So the host factors related to their physical characteristics, related to their immunologic composition, cellular immunity, humoral immunity, presence of barriers, okay? The host factors like habits, customs, traditions, beliefs, recreational activities, sexual activities are all agent factors that may predispose an individual to develop the disease, okay? The topography of the soil, the climate, okay, the social environment, okay, the political climate, the economic environment are part of these environmental factors that may also contribute to the development of the disease. There has to be a balance, okay, created among the agent factors, the host factors, and the environmental factors in order for that individual to become healthy and prevent the occurrence of disease. Okay? Now, epidemiology, knowing this fact, epidemiology will be able to elucidate for us the etiology of disease. Now we have known that the cause of the COVID-19 is a coronavirus type, simply because we were able to identify now the particular agent of COVID-19. The same is true that we have identified the etiology of the different, a lot of infectious diseases and even non-communicable diseases because it had been elucidated through epidemiologic studies. Knowing a particular disease and these patients now who developed the disease were followed up over time, we were able to understand the natural history of the disease. And those people now who are getting affected now, we will be able to identify now the factors, the risk factors that may predispose these people now to develop a particular disease. Okay? And knowing now those who are affected, okay, describing these people who are affected, we may be able to identify now the high risk groups. Okay? So the sexually transmitted infections, for example, are more common among these commercial sex workers, okay, in the same, or those who, and those with multiple sexual partners, okay. So these are the high risk groups for sexually transmitted infections. So a lot of the knowledge that we know about diseases now, okay, were brought about by epidemiologic studies, by identifying the etiology, by understanding the natural history, by identifying the potential risk factors, and even identifying the high risk groups. Because if we do know these things now, we may be able to determine what programs can be implemented to bring about reduction in the occurrence of the disease. And this can also be utilized later on for the evaluation of programs. If we were able to identify the determinants of the disease, then we may be able now to identify also or determine what programs we need to implement. And that these can also be epidemiological information can also be utilized in order for us now to determine whether the programs that we are implementing are actually successful or not. Okay? Are we reducing the rate of the disease? Okay. Are people now getting healthier because of the programs that we have implemented by addressing the factors affecting disease distribution? I think the experience that we had with the COVID-19 uh, made us better understand concepts of epidemiological information. Okay? And there are strategies or approaches that epidemiologists have done in order for us to determine now the cause and effect relationship of the factors and the occurrence of disease. No? So, and these strategies are divided into two types. The descriptive strategy, which aims to generate possible explanation for the causation of the disease. These are the following studies, or the type of studies, or the study designs, approaches, or strategies. A case report, where you highlight the unusualness of a particular case. Once that unusual factor had been identified, then you can make you can hypothesize that that particular factor may be, or the possible factor contributing to the occurrence of a particular disease. Case series is highlighting similarities among cases, okay, of a among cases of a particular disease, no? So several people have the same disease, and you highlight now the similarities. The factor that are similar among these cases now may be the possible factor or the probable factor that is contributing to the occurrence of the disease. Cross-sectional studies, descriptive study, is otherwise known as the prevalence study, wherein in a particular population, a random sampling had been done and these people were tested for the occurrence of, a particular disease, presence of a particular disease. And you're going to come up with two groups. One group has the disease and the other does not have the disease. And you describe now these two groups of people as to the factors that you are now considering as the possible factors contributing to the disease causation. So if you found out that there are more, the proportion of those with the factor is higher among those with the disease compared to those without the disease, then that particular factor may be, or probable factor contributing to the disease occurrence. Okay? Analytic strategy is different from a descriptive strategy in the sense that analytic strategy aims to test the hypothesis. Okay? And there are two types of analytic strategy. One is observational and the other one is experimental. The difference between observational strategies as compared to experimental study is that in observational, you do not manipulate a factor. In the experimental study design, there is manipulation of a factor. So without you manipulating the exposure factor and the disease factor, okay, this is exemplified either by doing a cross-sectional analytic study, case control, or cohort study designs. In a cross-sectional study, it's just like a cross-sectional descriptive, but this time you are employing inferential statistics to see whether there is a difference between the group with the disease and the group without the disease as to the factor being studied. Okay? In a case control study, you start with a group with the disease and match it with a control group without the disease. And then you compute for the odds ratio in order for you to determine whether the factor has an association with the disease or not. Okay? So the strength of the association can be seen or can be computed using your odds ratio. I repeat, in a case control, those with the disease are compared with the control group, those without the disease. Okay? And then you look for the factor present or absent in those with the disease, and also the factor presence or absence in those without the disease. And the odds ratio is now computed to see the degree of association. Now, in a cohort study design, what we studied was you start with a group without the exposure to a particular factor, and you compare that with a group with exposure to a particular factor. And these two groups shall now be followed up over time, okay? And you look for the occurrence of disease among those who have the exposure factor and those without the exposure factor. The odds ratio must be the odds ratio or the risk ratio must now be computed to determine the association between the factor and the outcome. I repeat, there are two groups of individuals here. One who had been exposed with the factor, and the other group are those who had not been exposed to the factor, and they're followed up over time. How many will develop the disease among those with the factor compared to how many will develop the disease among those who were not exposed to the factor? And the risk ratio shall now be computed. The greater the risk ratio, if it is equal to if it is more than 1, RR of more than 1, then that factor is a risk factor. RR of less than 1, then that factor is a protective factor. RR of equal to 1, then there's no difference between the exposure factor, okay? You may be exposed or you may not be exposed to the factor, and there's no relationship with the occurrence of the disease. The experimental study design now has two groups, but they're supposed to be randomly allocated to the experimental group, those that will be given the factor, okay, and the control, and it's compared with the control group. So there are two groups in experimental study designs. One group is the experimental, wherein you manipulate the factor, and the control group wherein you do not manipulate the factor, okay? So this experimental group and the control group are now compared, okay, as to the outcomes that you want to study, okay? So remember, for example, in COVID-19, and you want to determine whether ivermectin is good or bad for COVID-19, then you give now the usual management for COVID-19 plus ivermectin, and you give the usual treatment in the control group without the ivermectin, and then you compare these two groups now as to the outcomes that you have identified that you're going to measure. Okay? We did discuss about the epidemiologic chain, and then we said last time now that there are two phases in the epidemiologic chain, the pre-pathogenic phase and the pathogenic phase. In the pre-pathogenic phase, disease did not occur yet. Okay, once the agent of disease had entered the system of the host, and the disease spectrum now may happen, and the disease spectrum can either be mild, moderate, or severe. And this is the pathogenic phase of illness. If you try to intervene at the pre-pathogenic phase of illness, then you call this the primordial level of prevention and the primary level of prevention. So there are two levels of prevention at the pre-pathogenic phase, primordial and the primary level of prevention. Once the disease is already had happened, okay, then you can have now the spectrum of mild, moderate, and severe. Intervening, okay, during the mild or moderate phase of the illness is secondary prevention, and intervening during the severe phase of illness is actually tertiary level of prevention. To make it clearer, primordial level of prevention now, without, okay, the patient does not have the disease yet, intervening by taking care of the risk factors is actually primordial level of prevention, okay? So for example now, intervening by staying in an area that is properly ventilated to prevent COVID-19 infection is part of the primordial level of prevention. Primary level of prevention is divided into two. There are two types, health promotion and specific protection. If you want now to promote, okay, the well-being of the individual, for the individual to be healthy by taking in proper nutrition, okay, doing the exercise, conducting personal hygiene, okay, these are all health promotion activities. So health education is an example of a health promotion activity. What's the difference between the health promotion and specific protection? In the health promotion, you are not targeting a specific disease. It is actually for the general health of that individual, and that is health promotion. But doing COVID-19 vaccination, for example, is targeting a specific disease against COVID-19, and that is a specific protection. Now, secondary level of prevention is when the patient is already sick. But not all diseases, okay, are manifesting are manifesting clinically. There are diseases that may be asymptomatic and yet the patient is already sick. And therefore, screening for abnormalities is actually part of secondary prevention. We have done a lot of mammogram in order for us to detect uh, breast cancer early. We have done pap smear, papillomastoid smear, okay, cervical cytology, in order for us to detect cervical cancer early. Okay, so this cancer screening, infectious disease screening that we are doing now are part of early diagnosis and treatment. For you to detect disease early and treat them early at the early manifestation of the disease. Okay, even when the disease is already there, but the patient is still asymptomatic. A lot of hepatitis B virus infection are actually asymptomatic. So there is a need for us also to screen for hepatitis B. And even among our medical students, no, a lot of them, some of them have hepatitis B, but they are not even aware that they have hepatitis B infection. The same is true with tuberculosis. Okay, a lot of people are also asymptomatic for TB, and yet they are already suffering from tuberculosis. Now, when the disease is already severe, okay, then what we can do is disability limitation and rehabilitation. If the patient already had myocardial infarction or congestive heart failure because of less long-standing hypertension, then we can do cardiac rehab. If the patient has severe COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, because of long-standing smoking, okay, and long-standing COPDs with exacerbations, then what we can do is pulmonary rehab. If the patient already had suffered stroke because of a long-standing uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, then probably we can do already disability limitation and even stroke rehabilitation. Okay? So sayang na sana nakapag-intervene tayo by looking at the primary level of prevention, wala pa siyang sakit, looking at the risk factors, promoting good health, okay, and protecting them from the occurrence of a particular disease. Then we should have prevented the patient now getting sick and doing this secondary and tertiary level of prevention. But a lot of times we have failed in the primary level of prevention and the primordial level of prevention, that we get to see our patients already in the secondary level of prevention. Okay, once we see them in the secondary, it's very, very important, okay, that we should prevent the progression of disease in order for the patient not to get into this tertiary level of prevention. Okay. This is the model that we have talked about a while ago. This is the epidemiologic model. There are other models that have been advocated. This is the epidemiologic triangle, the same concept. There has to be a balance between the three components of the triangle, the agent, host, and the environment. If there is an imbalance, disease may happen. And then there's also the wheel model. In the wheel model, it had been stated that the man has that genetic core. If that man has the genetic core and there is a predisposition for the development of the disease because of poor environmental factors, okay, made up of your social environment, biological environment, physical environment, and the like, then man may be at risk of getting the disease because of that genetic core. In the Webb model, it has been stated that disease is brought about by a complex genealogy of antecedent causes, and that these antecedent causes may be intertwined with one another, that sometimes it is difficult for us to determine the real cause of the disease. Okay? So, a lot of the cardiovascular diseases now have similar risk factors with the other endometabolic diseases, diabetes mellitus, for example, and that these factors now may be intertwined, that they are now, that it makes us difficult now to determine the real cause of the disease. Okay? At this point in time, we're ready to discuss the differences between an outbreak, epidemic, and a pandemic. Once we talk of an outbreak, this is a sudden rise in the number of cases, clearly in excess of what's considered normal. So that's an outbreak. That's also the same definition of epidemic. Increase in the number of cases, clearly in excess of what's considered normal. But if the cases now are situated only in a particular place, okay, example, measles outbreak in the NCR alone, okay, then that can be considered an outbreak. An increase in the number of foodborne infection among those who came from a party, okay, that is considered an outbreak. But if that particular the number of cases now is happening over a larger geographic area, okay, the poliomyelitis that was noted, which was noted in Lanao del Sur, then case was also identified in Laguna, and then in the NCR. So it becomes now a larger geographic area. Then you call that an epidemic. So an epidemic is an increase in the number of cases, clearly in excess of what's considered normal, happening over a larger geographic area. But if this spread now is in multiple countries, as what had happened in COVID-19, as what would happen in SARS during the time, no? Then that is called a pandemic. And the WHO is very, very careful in declaring a pandemic because there are implications related to the transfer of trades, transfer of services, and even the economic implications related to declaring a pandemic. I have given you a YouTube site which you can watch just to determine the difference between pandemic, epidemic, and an outbreak. Now, if you have an outbreak, okay, of course, the number of cases now shall be monitored and put in a graphical presentation. And based on the graphical representation, you may be able to determine when you're dealing with a point source epidemic or you are dealing with a propagated type of epidemic. So if you came from a particular party and you develop gastroenteritis brought about by the foodborne infection, okay, then there is an increase in the number of cases, and then there's a peak after which the number of cases now will go down. But if there is now community transmission, okay, there's human to human transmission, as what had happened with COVID-19, then you may have a peak and then going down, and you may have another peak, no? So this is very, very characteristic of a propagated outbreak, no? So we have seen these cases, that this type of an epidemic curve in the COVID-19 that we have seen, okay? Again, I repeat, if you have an epidemic, you have to describe now of increase in the number of cases, identify the time, the place, and the people affected. Because by knowing factors of occurring at that particular time, the people affected in that particular place, you may be able now to uh, formulate hypotheses about the possible factors affecting disease distribution. Okay, again, there's another site, a link, which you can see for you to understand epidemiologic curves. Now, there's also surveillance system that we're doing. In the COVID-19, we have done surveillance. What is surveillance? It's nothing else but a collection, analysis, interpretation, and the dissemination of data regarding a particular health event. No? So the COVID-19 is a health event. Okay? Accidents are also health events. Okay? So we have to collect this information now. What are the things that we are doing? What are the areas where surveillance are actually being done? Of course, we're doing it for infectious diseases. We want to determine the number of cases of the different infectious diseases. We're also counting the number of chronic diseases. So we have a cancer registry. We have also we have a registry for tuberculosis, for cardiovascular, cerebrovascular accidents, strokes. We have those registries because we want to count the number of chronic diseases. We're also looking at injuries, okay? How many head falls? Okay, and then for example, the National Orthopedic Center came up with statistics related to falls, and they found out now that 30% or more than 30% of those who had falls had osteoporotic fracture. No, so injuries must also be looked into. The health service uptake, the COVID-19 pandemic made us realize that we lack the number of ICU beds. We lack also the number of mechanical ventilators in the event that we are going to make use of this equipment and facilities. No? So it's very, very important now that we have had the experience in COVID-19, then we should be able now to be better prepared to tackle the next epidemic or pandemic if ever it would happen again, no? So because of our previous experience. So there has to be surveillance as to the capacity of the different healthcare facilities to take care of moderate, severe cases of diseases. It's not only hindi lang binibilang ganun, no? Nagbibilang din tayo ng vector. Nasaan ba yung mga Anopheles species ng mosquito na nagkokos ng ating mga malaria? Nasaan ba ang mga Aedes aegypti distributed? Nasaan ba ang mga Culex quinquefasciatus para sa mga filariasis? Nasaan ba yung mga Oncomelania quadrasis snail which are intermediate hosts for the development of schistosomiasis? Okay, so the vectors of diseases are likewise studied in order for us now to determine the distribution of a particular disease. And we also had done surveillance as to the environmental hazards, no? So meron tayong mga geomapping na ginagawa. Alam natin kung nasaan ang mga fault lines. Alam natin yung mga data, okay, kung lumalaki ang mga fault lines na yan. Alam natin yung history kung kailan nag-erupt ang mga volcanoes, no? So based on this history now, we can now have a better prediction kung kailan uli sila po pwedeng maging active and pose health threats to people. So all of these things now are being are having surveillance. Okay. Now surveillance, we can be able to characterize the patterns of the disease. Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? Okay. Are we doing good? We may be able to detect epidemics clearly in excess of what's considered normal. Because poliomyelitis, the Philippines had been certified polio-free. Then all of a sudden, several years after, we were able to detect a case of polio. One paralytic polio from previously non-existing polio cases, okay, polio case, then that is considered already an epidemic, an excess of what's considered normal. You do not often see meningococcemia, but if you see 1-2 cases of meningococcemia in an area where it is not existing, then it is already of epidemic proportion. Okay? So, diabetes in the Philippines now is of epidemic proportion. Okay? So, We are doing surveillance because by counting, collecting this information now, it will alert us whether there is a need for us to further investigate. Do not investigate if if the occurrence is not clearly in excess of what's considered normal. Okay, because there are already programs and health projects that are being implemented to answer the particular problem. Okay, surveillance is also done whether there's a need for us to conduct an in-depth research on the factors affecting disease distribution. Okay, now the surveillance is being done. We're collecting this information, analyzing and interpreting this information because it will tell us now what disease control programs are effective and not, and whether they are effective or not. No, it can also set us priorities, set our priorities as far as intervention. With the limited resources that we have, okay, doing a surveillance, doing the collection of this information, then priorities can be set as to what disease should be addressed first, what are the other diseases that may not have enough great impact in terms of the health and productivity of our population, and they can be taken care of at the latter date rather than this type of diseases that have greater impact. Okay, surveillance system is also being used now to evaluate our projects, health projects and programs. Okay, now passive surveillance is already being done because there are already laws related to notifiable diseases. But I'd like to make mention that among private practitioners, even among our faculty members at FEU NRMF, okay, the passive surveillance, the notification of diseases that they have seen in their private clinics now, notifying the local health unit, okay, the regional health office, and even the Department of Health are not being done. Okay, so we have an underreporting of the diseases that we have, no, simply because they have not been properly reported, and that's the reason why in the universal healthcare, the electronic medical recording is a must in every healthcare facility. Okay, in FEU NRMF, we're actually doing this passive surveillance because it is a must that all hospitals must report to the Department of Health cases that they have seen related to the notifiable diseases. Active surveillance is being done for epidemics. Of course, we have no experience about those, though. It is the responsibility of the Department of Health now to do this active surveillance. So when COVID-19 erupted, okay, the Department of Health did the active surveillance. So nagte-testing tayo, kanya na-notify ang mga barangays, na-notify ngayon ang mga response teams, okay, na pumupunta sa mga bahay-bahay in order for us to do the testing, no? So they isolate the sick and they quarantine those who had been exposed. So that's basically done during inactive surveillance. So epidemics, active surveillance ang ginagawa. Okay? Sentinel surveillance naman, ito ngayon yung mga unusual cases, yung mga deaths, no, na nangyayari. Kung merong nag-collect niyan, usually in designated sentinel sites. San Lazaro Hospital, for example, okay, yan ay isang infectious disease site. Doon din sa Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, ito ay isang infectious disease research site, no? So itong mga ito are considered sentinel sites. Kanya mga kaso, for example, ng rabies or yung mga mahihirap na kaso ng infectious are being referred in these institutions now, and their data now are being gathered, okay, in order for us now to see whether we have a problem related to a particular disease occurrence. Okay? So, yung ating mga poisoning, meron namang designated mga centers, okay, mga regional hospitals, dinesignate din nila sila as poison control centers. So, the information na nakikita ito ngayon, it can tell us now the picture related to poisoning in the Philippines. Okay? So, ito yung mga sentinel surveillance na tinatawag. Sometimes rumor surveillance, wag din yun yung babaliwalain, no? Because there are also good sources of information, no? Because sometimes we do not know the cause of a particular problem, and it has emanated from a particular rumor. Example, maraming drowning ang nangyayari in a particular place. Tapos ang rumor doon, merong mga diwata, may mga kumukuha, okay? O may mga evil spirits or whatever spirits na pwedeng nangunguha ng mga taong namamatay at nadodrown sa particular area to. Nagsimula sa rumor surveillance, and because of that rumor now, we were able now to identify identify the problem, and then look deeper into the possible factors bringing about that particular occurrence. Okay? So, nagsimula siya sa rumor surveillance. Sometimes diseases naman do not have a particular name yet because it's something novel. Hindi pa siya kilala. Kanya hindi natin alam na coronavirus ang cause nung COVID-19 din dati, no? Kanya tinawag siyang Wuhan virus, no? Tapos, yung manifestations niya, we're not so certain about it. So, meron lang siyang mga clinical manifestations which they have coined into, which they have now grouped into a particular syndrome. Kanya doon pumasok ngayon yun, meron ba siyang panlasa? Okay? Meron ba siyang pang-amoy? Yung mga yon ipinasok nila as possible, okay, infection ng particular type of disease. Short of knowing now, knowing the full understanding of the disease spectrum. Ngayon medyo alam na natin, no, kung ano yung mga manifestations for us to say that this is more COVID and this is more flu. Okay? So we have this because of the experience that we had with COVID-19 for the past 2 years, more than 2 years, then we were able now to gather enough information now for us to make now a better judgment as to the causation of disease. No? So nagsisimula sila sa pag-collect ng information. Either you collect syndromes, ito yung mga constellation of signs and symptoms. Okay? Disease occurrence brought about by rumors. Okay? Occurrence of diseases collected in sentinel sites. Okay? Active surveillance done by the national government because there is an epidemic, or they are already routinely collected information because there are already laws that they're supposed to be reported, and these are the passive surveillance. Now, when you're doing your surveillance system, it's very important that the collection and dissemination of information must be simple and it should be flexible. The data that we have gathered should be of good quality, okay? Hindi sana naman siya mga false information, okay? The data gathering must be acceptable to people, and the data, okay, the instrument that we're doing now for collecting the data must have high sensitivity, okay, and should have high positive predictive value. And the instrument that we're doing using to gather data must be valid, meaning to say it should be able to measure what it is supposed to measure. So when we say these are the COVID-19 confirmed, then the instrument, okay, or the test that we have made use of should be valid and should measure COVID-19 disease. And when we're actually now collecting this information, it's very, very important that there has to be representativeness. So meaning to say, when we say that the NCR is classified in this particular category, then meaning to say now that the distribution of the cases that we have gathered now is representative of that particular NCR. Otherwise, sasabihin mo that this is only true in this particular area in Quezon City and not for the whole NCR, no? So, yung representativeness ng information that we are now disseminating to the public is very, very important for a good surveillance system. Ang surveillance system dapat mas timely. We were able to have this, we noticed this problem before because makikita mo na sa reporting ng Department of Health nung nakaraan, lalabas, sasabihin nila that our data, okay, or 4, 6, even 10 laboratories were not able to report their data on time. So that affects the timeliness of the information. And sometimes the ones reported were already information from previous week. Okay? So that's not being timely. So gusto sana natin ng real-time occurrence of a particular disease, no? So nahuli ang Pilipinas dito sa surveillance system. Nagkaroon din tayo ngayon ng mas magandang tawag dito tracking, tracing ng ating mga contacts, okay? Because of what had happened and because of the learnings that we have had also from previous countries who had implemented a better surveillance system compared to us. And there has to be some stability, no? So hindi dapat nawawala yung information, hindi dapat nakukurap. I still remember when one time there was no reported data simply because they were actually now correcting the previous information. Okay, ina-update nila yung information na meron sila, no? So there is an issue related to stability of the information that are being collected. I repeat, this is related to collection, okay, to analysis, to interpretation, to dissemination of data when we're talking about surveillance system. Meron din akong binigay na link para maaral nyo ang public health surveillance. And lastly, this is the last topic that we're supposed to take up, and this is related to outbreak investigation. At the end of the session, you should be able now to do some investigation of the outbreak and do control measures related to a particular outbreak. No? Many of you will be working, baka mamaya, marami sa inyo, shall be working in public health sector. No? You will become medical officers in health centers, or some of you may be promoted to become regional health officers, okay, provincial health officers, city health officers. Ang pangarap ko ay magkaroon ng FEU and RMF graduate na maging Secretary of Health. No? And there are 4 basic steps in trying to investigate an outbreak. First, confirm whether you have an outbreak or not. And then you describe the outbreak. You determine the cause. And then, if you know the cause, you may be able to control. Okay? So these are actually the 4 steps: confirm, describe, determine the cause, and control. And there are some steps that can be done in these different major steps. So to confirm, you first have to determine whether there is a problem or whether there is an outbreak. Do not proceed in the other steps not unless you have an outbreak. And we have defined an outbreak as increase in the number of cases clearly in excess of what's considered normal. So if you go back over time, okay, so dapat armed kayo with your line graph or your vertical bar graph in the past to show whether there is an increase in the number of cases. It is normal that you're going to have more dengue cases during wet season, okay? During rainy season. Normal yun na mas mataas ang kaso ng dengue. Now, comparing it to the rainy season in the previous years, meron ba siyang significant increase? Kasi kung hindi significant ang kanya naging increase, then probably may not have an outbreak. It is also normal to have an increase in the number of gastroenteritis during rainy season. The same is true with leptospirosis. Okay? So, expect an increase in the number of cases. But I said, it has to be in excess of what you consider normal because you have compared it with the previous years. Now, if there is no outbreak, do not proceed. But if there is outbreak, then do something to protect yourself and the rest of the population. So advisories must already be released. Okay? So kung halimbawa ang manifestation niya ay gastrointestinal, then protect now the fecal-oral route. Kung halimbawa naman yan ay respiratory manifestations, then the protection of respiratory droplets and even airborne infections now must already be released, okay, together with the general protective measures, okay, like hygiene, okay, etc. So there are outbreaks that may not be simple to investigate, and therefore you have to ask for help. No, there was a time that there was an increase people, for example, who went to a particular, I think it was in Taiwan, that they went there, and then they had there was a factory that the people who were working had Stevens Johnsons, and the people who had Stevens Johnsons were mostly those recruited from the Philippines, and they were actually Filipinos. And that's so complicated an epidemic, an outbreak, that they started now getting people, toxicologists, okay, immunologists, occupational physicians, etc., in order for them to study the outbreak. And they found out now that there was a chemical that these Filipinos were exposed to that are actually reacting to an anti-helminthic that they have taken, okay, before being employed as an employee in that particular plant. No, so that's a complicated outbreak, and it is not so simple that there is a need for us to ask for help. Okay, so WHO is actually helping the Philippines now in the event that we have an outbreak that is so complicated. Now, once you have confirmed that there is an outbreak, the next step is to describe. And describing is just identifying or determining the disease as to people affected, as to place of occurrence, and the time of occurrence. Why are you doing this? Because you want to determine the cause. You want to formulate the possible factors, and this is the formulation of hypothesis. And before you can test the hypothesis, okay, you have to gather evidence. So you collect the information from the source. You have to identify the source. Primary source, meaning to say the cases. You have to talk to them. You also have to talk to the contacts. You have to determine the methods for data collection. Are you going to do query? Are you going to do observation, or are you going to review documents? No, so the methods of data collection must be looked into. So query sa cases and contacts, observation sa cases and contacts, and then you also have to review records. Okay, you also have to get the source, or the another source of information are actually those people who have taken care of these cases, and even so health workers are also a good source of information. Okay, now once you have now collected the information, okay, and you have now formulated your hypothesis, it is now important for you to test the hypothesis, and testing the hypothesis will make use of analytic strategies. So dito papasok ngayon yung cross-sectional analytic, case control, cohort studies, and even experimental studies. Pag nakita mo na ngayon, tinest mo na yung hypothesis, then you may be able now to choose the most appropriate hypothesis. Okay? So that's determining the cause now. And lastly, because you already have identified the cause, oh, I'm sorry. Naku, hindi ko na malaman. Sorry. Okay, anyway, because you already have identified the cause, you may now do the necessary action. Once you have the necessary action now, write your report and then make your recommendations to prevent future outbreaks. Okay? So that's basically disease outbreak investigation. Now, as a final output for today's course, after going through the learning modules on epidemiology, what I want you to come up with is just write a commentary on how the health sector is approaching the current COVID-19 pandemic. Substantiate your narrative with epidemiologic concepts and principles. And we do hope that this will be submitted on October 31, 2022. That's going to be a Monday, 12 noon, and please upload this via Moodle. Okay? So again, going through all these concepts on epidemiology from the definition, from the uses from the strategies in epidemiology, from the difference between outbreak, epidemic, pandemic, and then knowing now the different strategy, how to uh, uh, do disease outbreak investigation, and what are the control measures that have been implemented, okay, related to COVID. Just give us now your insights on how the government had approached the control of COVID-19 pandemic in the Philippines. Okay, so your insights now will be very valuable now in order for you to see whether you have now acquired the necessary skills and acquire the necessary knowledge in epidemiology. Okay, so thank you very much for attending today's session, and I uh, wish you good luck in the in the midterm examination that shall be conducted next week. I am supposed to contribute around 35 questions on these topics. Okay, and I do hope you get to answer the questions based on the given lecture. Thank you.